Hello everybody, Adrian Plus here.
Yes, and Bridget, hello.
And I'm afraid we screwed up the numbers again. I think it was last week. We thought we were on 185.
But actually we are now.
It was actually 184, so it's now 185 in Sun and Shadows. Fascinating though that fact is. Just
yes. Not maybe that important. And of course now we are post-Christmas, and that does apply to everybody, doesn't it? And I know everybody's Christmas will have been different, but they will all be saying either with sadness or with relief or with all sorts of other things.
But it's quite remarkable that some will be saying, that was awful, I was on my own. Others will be saying, thank goodness I was on my own.
Exactly.
Some will be saying, we had everybody together, and the responses to it will, and some will say, I can't handle it because of stuff that happened years ago. So
yes, it's true. And then you have to put in the weather. And obviously for some this has been a devastating few days with storms and all sorts of devastation really in the northwest. And we were in the northwest, weren't we? Because we had a house so that for once all of our immediate family could come together, which hasn't happened for a few years now, has it?
No, that's right. Everybody travelled from wherever they were, and we had a house that was big enough, fortunately, to spread out a bit and come together if we wanted to. So actually that worked pretty well, didn't it?
I don't know. It's always difficult to talk about something afterwards without having had time to really think it through. But I think one of the things that struck me is that when we say we had a family Christmas, we actually mean we spent time with a group of 9, including the 2-year-old, all of whom have developed very different ideas as to what Christmas should be and how it should happen.
And the 2-year-old is wondering what Christmas is still. Very excited.
Yeah, the 2-year-old and the 36-year-old, I would say, both want magic.
Yeah.
They want that something. And it's very hard for adults to catch that. So I think sometimes people abandon it altogether and go for a nice ordinary day in which they do all the things they would normally do and plenty of space in order to do them. And other people definitely want games and silliness. Yeah. Silliness can go a bit wrong, as we discovered again this Christmas, didn't we? Well, somebody very close to me sitting here had chosen what to give small gifts to everybody.
Yeah, well, I didn't actually realise what the effect of some of them would be. They were very cheap.
And what was it?
Well, one was a ball that you squeeze.
Yes.
It was white, and you could hold it inside your palm, and when you squeezed it, all the bits kind of squeezed between your fingers.
Yes,
so
which is quite a nice feeling until what happens.
Normally you'd enjoy that, and you'd think, well, I'll stop doing that now. But I walked into a room where my son was sitting on the sofa, and he was covered in white slime, and this ball had not really exploded, but just burst.
Yes.
And just covered him in this white slime, so that wasn't too good.
I think the other thing I remember is that somebody had given somebody some little men that you throw up at the window and they stick on the window. Where we were staying, one of the rooms had a very, very high ceiling, which meant very high walls, and the little men had decided to stick very firmly, very high up on the wall, which meant that before leaving at that point where you're frantically trying to leave the house in as good a state as it was when you got there, there were 2 people almost standing on each other's shoulders trying to reach the little men in order to bring them down. So there's all those things.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you, for the whole of the period you're there, you think, well, we'll tackle that before we go, and then suddenly you have no time left, and you're trying to think, how do we get those little men off the wall?
Yeah.
But we did finally manage it.
I think one of the things that I was aware of is you make choices whether to bridge gaps or whether to just allow the differences, the different ideas, whether you try and impose anything, whether you we had difference in diets, didn't we? And we had different ideas of what people would like to have for their meal. We ended up having several options on several meals, and that seemed to work quite well. But I was very conscious how easy it is to make it all very superficial, because it's hard within a few days
To settle down. Yeah.
to settle. Yeah.
Yeah. And some people are super efficient, and some people are not.
Yes.
So
yeah.
there's all that, but
Yeah. Overall, we had a
underneath
lovely
that,
time. I don't want to give the wrong
underneath
impression.
that is how good it is to travel through that period
Yeah.
and be with people who some of whom you're not able to see very often, and to actually be with them and talk
and to see a
uh,
glimpse
yeah.
of who they have become.
Yeah, that's right.
When you have had I don't mean you, one has had very little influence on them for a long time. They have become who they are. It was certainly very interesting. It struck me, we have this image of the nativity, and sometimes the shepherds are still hanging around in our nativity sets when the wise men arrive, and you can't imagine the conversations that might have taken place.
Well, the wise men and the
Yes, and the shepherds.
shepherds.
I mean,
What do you think they might say?
oh, I don't know. I think their take would have been really rather different, don't you? I mean, what do you mean you followed a star? What do you mean you... And the language difficulty, we never really talk about any language difficulty, do we?
No, we don't. No, no, I never thought of that. I wonder. Yeah, they were. That's interesting to ask what they had in common.
Yes.
The kings and the shepherds, or the kings actually
Wise
came
men,
quite a
yeah.
bit. The wise men came quite a bit later, didn't they?
Well, I know.
But both were responding to something that they didn't understand fully, and that was extraordinary, and was enough to make them, in one case, make a long, long journey, and in another to leave your sheep. That must kind of been a very unusual thing to do, to come and find this person that you've been told about. Very dramatic, very vivid. So maybe they were able to contact somehow. I don't know.
And I suppose the truth is that you only get glimpses of that in our services over Christmas, where you just get a moment of that wonder, or a moment of that other that will have been there. That extraordinary meeting of something that, even though you don't quite understand it, is really different to anything you've experienced before. I mean,
it was an interesting year this year for me, anyway, looking at things on television before Christmas, and we were looking at some carols sung in wonderful churches, cathedrals, sung by very classy choirs, and it took me back more than anything I've known for years to the feeling I had inside me when I heard carols at Christmas, because when I was little it was mainly about presents, but actually the wallpaper was carols, people singing, a sense of wonder about something I could never possibly understand. And there's a great value in that, I think. And I was quite tearful once or twice listening to some of the old carols being sung, and particularly perhaps because they were sung, a large part of the of one or two of them were sung by young boys of I don't know how old they are.
Well, it's just that
12
glorious treble voice, isn't it?
Yeah.
The boys have before. Some, not all boys, but a few very specially voiced boys have before their voices break.
They do.
I remember my brother had the most beautiful singing voice, and then his voice broke, and it was a little mini tragedy until his voice worked into something, and he still sings, but worked into something that was acceptable again. That strange chrysalis thing that you were talking about before your voice becomes a butterfly again.
Yeah.
It's not great.
And I also reflected on the fact that it didn't matter a jot whether the young boys singing understood much about what was going on. Some of them probably did, but there's something about ceremony and celebration that takes you somewhere without you having to put labels on it particularly. And I think that's what I felt. And I really sort of went back to Christmas as I remembered it. I mean, we all, I guess everybody, no, it's not fair, is it? Some people don't, but remember waking up and there being presents at the bottom of the bed and feeling the packages with your hand. And I know it's a bit hackneyed to say that, but it was remember that, but the paraphernalia, the stuff that was connected with it, somehow worked well for me then. Now, when I watch all the stuff that leads up to Christmas, I get very weary of it, I have to say. But I was glad to go back like that to those memories.
Yeah, and I just think there are moments, and it may be with a church family or with your own family, where there's something that's beyond being able to analyse it and putting it into words, that isn't maybe the magic that we're talking about. I mean, our 2-year-old's magic moment was having asked Father Christmas for chocolate. He got chocolate, and that seemed to surpass all his other gifts.
Yes,
that
it did,
was
yeah.
magic. He'd asked for it, and there it was.
That was his first gift of the day.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
absolutely. Yeah. And I think there were moments when we were laughing, or moments when I looked across a room and one of my family who I hadn't been with for a while was there and special, and yeah, there were moments that were like that. But I was also thinking, Adrian, about the fact that we weren't in our own home. We were staying in a house that was not ours, and that has its own tensions. I mean, trying to make the cooker work for starters, trying to get the key out of the key box and remember the code. I mean, you start with tensions, and they're always there, aren't they? You know, whether you're going to be able to leave it as pristine as
Well,
it was.
I was going to say, looking at the house and thinking, there's only one way for this house to go, and that's down. So then you say to yourself, I'm going to make a special effort myself not to make it difficult to clean it up.
You
afterwards.
used to feel that about people's bathrooms when you stayed with people, didn't you? So I suppose that's the
terrible.
same thing.
Yes, you'd go to the bathroom, and I guess because they have visitors, it would be shining like a jewel, and you'd walk into it and think, oh dear, I think it's probably better if I just go quickly and quietly back to my room and not bother it. But no, it's so there's that. But also a sort of excitement because going room to room and
absolutely. And facing the fact that sometimes what you've sort of allowed yourself to fantasize about isn't quite the reality. I was thinking of a cottage that we rented, one of the first ones when our children were young, and it said that the cottage was on the village green, and we pictured this huge village green where the children would be able to play safely, and find that we were actually at the top of a triangle with 2 very busy roads running on either side of it, and one small kick of a ball would immediately take them into total danger from passing vehicles.
That's right, it was absolutely appalling. Yes, I remember that very well. I remember lots of them. I remember the fact that going to stay in places that we didn't have much money, so some of them were not terribly promising, but we had wonderful holidays because of what we did. And one of them was going up on the hills, wasn't it, and doing a wide game for the boys. And,
in the pouring rain.
In the pouring rain.
Yes, I thought of that this weekend because it really threw it down, didn't it?
Yeah,
it really did. It was, and when you're staying in a house as well, and again, I know people who know this if they've stayed in holiday cottages, you can easily lose direction. You sort of can't quite remember where the bathroom is, and you can't quite remember how to go about all sorts of things, really. But of course, the worst experience for us, and I know some people will have heard this story, but was when we were in New Zealand, wasn't it?
Yeah, when we were staying on a hillside, and there was a very nice house. It had a long dormitory room, and
it had been offered to us, hadn't it, as a final little break before the final night of our tour.
That's right, yeah. And we were feeling quite good about ourselves, I seem to remember. We thought it had gone pretty well, but that night, we were up in the long room, and you and I were in the bed at the far end of the long room, and the three, or was it four? Three children.
4 children.
Four
Really?
children.
They were all with
They
us.
were all there in the far end. And in the early hours, I was woken by a voice. Oh, to say before I go any
You've
further,
got
that
to explain
to go to the
exactly.
toilet in the night, which is a crucial thing in places you don't know, you had to go out of the door, turn the light on from inside the long narrow room so that when you got out there was light, and then the steps went outside, downwards obviously, and they
It was a wooden stairs.
wooden
steps,
stairs
yeah,
outside,
going
and they
outside.
turned left. So you obviously had to remember that left turn. Anyway, so I woke in the early hours of the morning and I heard someone shouting, "Adrian, Adrian, help, help!" And I turned to you to ask you what was going on or whatever it was, whatever else I normally did, and you'd gone.
Yes, well, I had needed to go to the toilet. I hadn't wanted to disturb anybody, so I had not turned the light on. And unfortunately, I had forgotten that these wooden steps turned left. So, and they had no railing. And so I trotted down the steps and trotted straight into the darkness and fell about 6 foot onto this hillside, which was so scary. You forget just how dark is when
Yeah.
there's no street lights and you're crawling around on some hillside. So yes, I
Absolutely.
did shout. I did. I needed help, Adrian.
And then I panicked and got up and walked to the door and forgot to turn the light on outside, went through the door, down the steps far too fast, forgot they turned left, and I didn't really fall, I took off, and you say you still remember me flying across
I
your head
do.
and landing on the other side. So now there's 2 of us on the hillside going, "Help, help." And our children, who
Yes.
thought it was an axe murderer or something, they locked the door.
They did. They did.
They
Well,
have
they did
children
let us in
sometimes.
eventually, but so we had one night left, and as you say, we had thought it had gone quite well, and I think it's a good sitcom really, because actually that last night of the tour we had to try to get up on the stage. We were covered in bumps and bruises and plasters, and in order to talk about our triumphant walk with God.
It has ever
So there's
been
always going to be a possibility
yeah.
of something going wrong when you're staying somewhere that is not as familiar as your own home.
But even where it is familiar, I was thinking about, I know this wasn't a holiday cottage, but the place where Jesus chilled, as far as one can see, was at Bethany, where Mary and Martha were.
Oh, I'm sure. And
And
Lazarus,
so they
yes.
all, and Lazarus, so they all knew each other, and it says Jesus loved them. So it was a good place to go. But even then, and even there, and even with those people, there came a moment when there was a bit of very ordinary bother, wasn't there? Where Martha says, "I'm doing all the cooking, and she's coming and sitting and listening to you talk. It's all very wonderful, but I've got to tell her to come and help." And Jesus annoyingly says, "No, she's chosen the best way." I imagine Martha saying, "Oh, has she now?"
Yes.
Yes, you're right. She
Yes.
has. You're quite right about that.
I think people have quite strong views on that, and certainly I think anyone who's had children will know how annoying it is when one of them seems to be doing very little to contribute to and the idea of Jesus saying no, it's fine. But I mean, there's
Saying
been
she's
so
chosen
much-
the better way is extremely annoying. I mean,
Well,
I appreciate he meant this is a good thing to do, that she wants to hear from me.
Yeah, there's so many views on
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
aren't there? I mean, people who sympathise very, very strongly with Martha. And there will be people who have felt that they have prepared the whole of the food on Christmas Day and done the washing up and ended up being the one who goes round doing the final clear, while other people appear to be either watching football or playing games or having a very nice time indeed. That wasn't our experience, I have to say, but this time. But I certainly remember when, there's that sense of it's not fair, and it's not fair that story is all about.
But one thing for sure is that it wouldn't have ruined their relationships because they were quite strong by the look of it and the sound of it, if you read on from there.
Yeah.
So it was okay to say something,
Yes.
even if you got it wrong, even if you heard something you didn't like.
Yeah.
We don't know, but I wonder afterwards, Martha said, can we just have a chat about what happened earlier? Just tell me in what sense. Anyway, I don't know. But yeah, we are, as we said earlier, we are very aware that some people have a very difficult time this time of year. Some people have a wonderful, wonderful time, and we're pleased about that. But we are back with you every week as we have.
And we'd love to hear from you. We're sorry if we sound a bit tired. We've only just got back, so we look forward to speaking to you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.